April 22nd, 1943. Dawn, Longstop Hill, northern Tunisia. The air smells of wet stone and cordite. Somewhere below the ridgeline, a German machine gun chatters, then goes silent. British infantry press themselves flat against the rocky ground, fingers digging into limestone that offers no cover, no mercy. Ahead of them, Longstop Hill rises like a wall. Not a hill, a fortress of rock and scrub, sheer faces broken by ledges infantry officers have already written off as impassable. The Germans know it too. They've dug in on the high ground, confident the approaches are locked tight. Then the ground begins to vibrate. Not the sharp rattle of tracked speed, but a deep, uneven rumble, slow, heavy, almost stubborn. A British sergeant turns his head and mutters something under his breath. "You've got to be joking." Out of the morning haze crawls a Churchill tank. Its armor is boxy, awkward. Its tracks are long and ungainly. To many men watching, it looks less like a predator and more like a badly assembled shed on caterpillar legs. Even now, months into the North African campaign, tank crews still joke about it. Too slow, too tall, too ugly. A tank designed for a war that no longer exists. Inside the steel hull, Trooper Jack Hargreaves grips the interior handhold as the engine labors beneath him. The Churchill Mark III bucks and shudders, every rivet singing. The heat is immediate, suffocating. Sweat runs down his spine despite the morning chill. "Keep her steady," the commander snaps through the intercom. "No rushing it." They all know the reputation. They've heard the jokes from faster crew, Crusader men, Sherman men, calling the Churchill a lumbering coffin, a tank that breaks down before it ever sees the enemy, a tank you apologize for being assigned. Ahead of them, the rock face steepens. Infantry officers shake their heads. This is where the tanks stop. This is where men go forward alone. But the Churchill doesn't slow. The driver eases the nose upward, the long tracks biting into stone that scrapes and shrieks beneath steel. The tank tilts at an angle that makes stomachs drop. Inside, loose kit slides across the floor. Someone swears. Outside, a British lieutenant stares in disbelief. The Churchill begins to climb. Slowly, relentlessly, as if it doesn't know it's not supposed to. High above, a German sentry peers over his sandbagged position, expecting more infantry, more men to cut down before breakfast. Instead, he sees something impossible beginning to rise from the cliff itself. And for the first time on Longstop Hill, confidence flickers, because the tank everyone laughed at hasn't stopped, and it's heading straight for the summit.
The angle increases. Inside the Churchill, gravity presses men sideways in their seats. The engine howls, a deep mechanical growl echoing inside the armored box. Jack Hargreaves can feel every individual stone through the track links, a grinding, teeth-rattling vibration that makes his jaw ache. 15 degrees, 20, the driver calls out, voice tight. The cliff face looms in the periscope like a vertical wall. Infantry below have stopped moving. They're just watching now, rifles forgotten in their hands. The Churchill's tracks are longer than any British tank in theater, designed for trenches, for broken ground, for the kind of terrain most engineers would rather avoid entirely. What looked like a design flaw on parade grounds becomes something else on Longstop Hill. The tank doesn't leap. It doesn't surge. It crawls. The front idler wheels scrape over a jagged lip of rock. For a heartbeat, the tank balances on its belly. The engine strains, exhaust belching black smoke. The crew holds their breath. Then the rear tracks bite. The Churchill hauls itself upward, inch by inch, as if dragging the hill down beneath it.
Above them, German Obergraffitter Karl Weiss squints through his binoculars. At first he thinks it's dust, then shadow, then a shape that doesn't belong there. "Panzer?" someone asks. "No," Weiss mutters, "that's not possible." The Germans had mined the obvious routes, sighted their anti-tank guns to cover the roads and slopes any sane commander would use. Their confidence rests on the simple fact that tanks do not climb cliffs. The Churchill's gun barrel crests the ledge. Weiss watches, frozen, as the square turret rises into view, close enough now to see the markings, the chipped paint, the British roundel smeared with desert grime. It's behind them. The first shell detonates inside a machine gun nest before anyone can react. Sandbags vanish in a cloud of dust and blood. The concussion slams into German positions like a hammer. Shouts erupt, orders overlap, men scramble to swing weapons around that were never meant to face this direction. A second Churchill appears to the right, then a third, each one grinding a different section of rock, exploiting angles no reconnaissance map ever marked as viable. Inside Hargreaves' tank, the commander slams the turret hatch open just long enough to get a better view. "Targets on the reverse slope, traverse left, fire at will." The gun recoils. The smell of cordite fills the fighting compartment. Somewhere outside, something explodes that wasn't supposed to. Below, British infantry surge forward, realization spreading like electricity. The impossible has happened. The high ground is no longer untouchable. For the Germans, the effect is immediate and devastating. Their strongest position has just been turned inside out, and the slowest tank on the battlefield is now exactly where no one planned for it to be. But as more Churchills grind upward, a darker truth settles in. If the Germans recover, if they bring their anti-tank guns around in time, these tanks will be trapped on the summit, silhouetted, exposed. The climb may be possible. Surviving what comes next is another matter entirely.
The summit of Longstop Hill erupts into chaos. German troops stumble from dugouts, half-dressed, some still clutching mess tins instead of rifles. Orders are shouted in German, then drowned out by the thunder of tank guns firing at point-blank range. The ground that was supposed to be untouchable suddenly feels very small. Inside the Churchill, Jack Hargreaves braces as the tank lurches forward onto flatter ground. The relief is brief. Almost immediately, the clang of metal rings through the hull. "Hit!" someone yells, but the round skids off the armor, screeching away into the scrub. The Churchill's thick frontal plate, mocked for its weight, cursed for its slowness, has just done exactly what it was built to do. The gunner doesn't hesitate. "On it!" The turret slews, a German Pak-38 anti-tank gun, its crew scrambling to swing it around, fills the sight. The British 6-pounder fires, the gun vanishes in a flash of fire and flying steel. Across the summit, similar scenes play out again and again. German defenders try to reposition, but the terrain that once protected them now traps them. Trenches face the wrong direction. Gun shields offer no cover from shells slamming in from behind. Obergefreiter Weiss drops his binoculars and runs. He runs past bodies, past shattered weapons, past men screaming for orders that never come. Behind him, the steady, grinding advance of the Churchills never speeds up and never stops. That's what breaks them. Not speed, not surprise alone. Certainty. The tanks move like inevitability, rolling forward through small arms fire that sparks uselessly off their armor. One Churchill takes a direct hit from a hollow charge round. The crew is shaken, ears ringing, but the tank keeps moving. Below the crest, British infantry arrive at the summit, breathless, stunned by what they're seeing. Tanks where tanks should not be, German positions collapsing in on themselves. A young lieutenant looks up at one of the Churchills and laughs, a short, disbelieving sound. "Bloody thing actually did it!" But even as the summit begins to fall, the danger isn't over. German artillery begins to range in. Shells whistle overhead, crashing into the rock, throwing shards of stone through the air like shrapnel. The Churchills are now obvious targets, silhouetted against the skyline. Inside Hargreaves' tank, the commander listens to the radio crackle with frantic chatter. Enemy armor reported moving, counterattack forming. If the Germans retake the hill, the tanks will be cut off, trapped at the top of the very cliff that saved them. The crew exchanges glances in the dim interior light. They've climbed the impossible. Now they have to hold it.
The counterfire comes hard and fast. German artillery walks its shells across the summit, the impacts creeping closer with each correction. Stone explodes upward in white flashes. The Churchills rock on their suspensions, engines revving instinctively as if the tanks themselves sense the danger. Inside, Jack Hargreaves tastes grit between his teeth. His ears ring constantly now, not from one hit, but from a dozen near misses that turn the interior into a steel drum being beaten from the outside. Armor reported west, the radio crackles. A German Panzer IV crests a distant rise, gun already traversing. It fires. The round slams into the rocky ground just short of a Churchill, spraying fragments across its hull. The British commander doesn't order a retreat. He orders the tanks forward. The Churchills advance into the fire, deliberately slow, their tracks grinding over debris and shattered weapons. Their thick armor absorbs punishment that would have crippled lighter tanks. Every hit leaves a mark, gouges, scorches, bent fittings, but the hulls hold. The Panzer fires again. This time, a Churchill answers. The British shell punches through the Panzer's turret ring. Flames burst from the hatches. The German tank stops moving, smoke pouring into the Tunisian sky. Around them, infantry dig in wherever they can, behind rocks, inside half-destroyed German trenches, clinging to ground that was never meant to be taken this way. Every man on the summit knows the truth. If they lose this ground, Longstop Hill will devour them. Another German assault forms, infantry pushing up through gullies they think are hidden. They emerge into the open and straight into Churchill machine gun fire. The tanks pivot, methodical, covering every approach. Minutes stretch, then hours. The sun climbs higher, baking metal and flesh alike. Water runs low. Ammunition is counted round by round. Still, the Churchills stay put, their engines idling like heavy, patient hearts. Down below, British command finally understands what has happened. Longstop Hill, the obstacle that stalled operations for months, is breaking. Not because of speed, not because of brilliance, but because one tank, built to endure punishment and cross ground no one respected, has refused to stop. As afternoon fades, German fire slackens. Their counterattacks falter, then fail altogether. The hill is no longer theirs. Inside the Churchill, Hargreaves leans back against the armor, exhaustion washing over him. Someone lets out a shaky laugh. They'll never call her useless again. But even as silence settles over the summit, the truth hasn't fully sunk in yet. Because what happened on Longstop Hill will echo far beyond Tunisia, and the Churchill's reputation is about to change forever. By nightfall, Longstop Hill belongs to the British. Flares burn in the distance, casting slow-moving shadows over wrecked guns and abandoned packs. The air is quieter now, not peaceful, but spent, the kind of silence that follows something irreversible. Churchill tanks sit hulled down along the summit, engines finally cut. Their armor is scarred, blackened, chipped. They look older than they did that morning, wiser. Jack Hargreaves climbs out through the hatch, legs stiff, hands trembling as they meet the cool night air. He looks down the face of the cliff they climbed, really looks at it now, and shakes his head. No one says it out loud, but everyone is thinking the same thing. That shouldn't have worked. German prisoners are marched past, eyes fixed on the tanks. Some stare openly, others refuse to look at all. They had trusted the ground, trusted the math of angles and slopes, and the ground betrayed them.
British infantry gather around the Churchills, touching the armor, pointing at track marks etched into stone like scars. The laughter is different now, quieter, edged with respect. Word spreads quickly. By morning, reports reach command. The assault succeeded because heavy tanks crossed terrain assessed as impassable. The same tank, once dismissed as obsolete, proved decisive against prepared defenses. The Churchill will never be fast, it will never be elegant, but after Longstop Hill, no one doubts what it can do when the ground turns ugly. In Italy, crews will push it up mountains. In Normandy, they'll drive it through mud and fire where others bog down. Engineers will adapt it, commanders will trust it, and enemy gunners will learn to recognize its silhouette with a sense of dread. The jokes fade. In their place is something rarer in war: confidence. On Longstop Hill, a tank everyone mocked climbed a cliff no one else could, and by doing so, broke the enemy's certainty. Sometimes the machine built to survive the worst terrain isn't the one that looks impressive on paper. It's the one that keeps moving when the map says stop.